Hi, welcome to Raj Live. Today we are going to discuss about API. At the same time, in what way being a business analyst required knowledge over API in some roles. Because I don't say that business analyst required knowing about API in all the profiles. It may vary from profile to profile. It will vary, depends on the kind of experience as well as the kind of role they were playing. But having some knowledge over API is essentially required nowadays, slowly to start with. Hence, I'm making this video. I hope you understand. So if you understand API, which is called Application Program Interface, it's a kind of software intermediate which majorly allows applications to interact with one among all. This is what generally API stands for. Means if you want to access some information from one application to another application, if another application wants to access what is that we have what is that we wants to deliver so far. For that reason, generally there is an interface which should be written under a program called application will be done by the developers. Usually developers will write these APIs for all that. For example, one example I'll give, of course, there were few examples I have given, but one example I'll give. For example, you want to use your LinkedIn profile or a Facebook profile. So for that, you don't require to have an own user ID password for LinkedIn or Facebook as separate. What is that you require? Your Gmail credentials are allowed. But because Gmail is an authenticated mail IDs, whatever the Gmail or whatever the mail IDs are, as those are authenticated and authorized ones, those email IDs can be used to access your LinkedIn or any Facebook social networking websites. But here you need to understand how is it possible, because social networking websites are these. This is Gmail. So how they are going to accept it? So for that, programmers will write an API which is called Application Programming Interface, so that this Gmail account details and all everything can be used as an access to enter into the social networking websites and all that. Right? So this is one example which you want to understand very clear. So normally these APIs will be written by the developers in different programming languages, because they use different programming languages to write that. Developers will write that. Maybe different web APIs and all everything will be used. Different programming languages like JavaScript, Java, at the same time Python, at the same time Perl scripting or Java scripting, Ruby, right? So these are the different programming languages followed by the scripting things will be used by the developers to write programming interface. This is what we call it as API, which stands for Application Programming Interface. Means if you want to have an interaction between two different applications, API connectivity is needed. This API integration and API knowledge over the API is becoming important for any application development nowadays. This is irrespective of technology, irrespective of the domain, irrespective of the role you belongs to. Having a knowledge over API is required nowadays for sure. In the context of BA, why I'm saying is because slowly business analyst roles are becoming mandatory even to have some technical knowledge over. For few profiles I'm mentioning, underline this point, not for every profile. So on that context, this application programming interface knowledge is something essentially important. This is point number one. Now, examples. One, you can see Google Maps. Google Maps is the one example for application programming interface. The next example is to have travel booking, where because if, for example, if I want to book a flight ticket, what is that? I can see all the information about the flight, when it is going to departure, when it will be arrived at that destination location, all that from the travel sites. Because any travel site you can say, right? I can, through the travel site, I can book the tickets for the flight, whatever, either it could be domestic or international flights and all everything. So how these travel sites have got this information? Because there is an access of two applications of flight information of that respective flight, which is connecting and having an access with the travel sites. So for that, there is an application programming interface called API has to be written by the developers. so that if I want to book a ticket for any of the flight, wherein I can access this travel flights information and all everything, arrivals and departures and all everything through this travel web portal, right? So this is the second one. And the third one, e-commerce, which is known to everyone, right? So if you want to shop something in e-commerce and all, you can access the information. Different products information can be accessed. So based on that, we can do the shopping accordingly. So application programming interface is something becoming mandatory for all the people who are working on the IT level in irrespective of the roles we have. This is what generally the brief introduction about API. Now, what are the examples of API? API has different examples. Types of APIs are as follows. The first is REST API, which is called representational state transfer APIs, which majorly rely on different guiding principles, something like client server structures, simple uniform interfaces to communicate across systems, at the same time stateless operations and all that. So this is all something called as REST API. This is point number one. Next type is webhooks. This is event based and as well as auto messaging system, where information will be sent from one system to another system. In any kind of event, what is that it will occur. This is where generally this type of API will be used, called webhooks. And the third API is called SOAP API, which is called Simple Object Access Protocols, because whenever there is a concept called web services, if you see, SOAP, UDDI, WSDL, all these things are there. So this Simple Object Access Protocol will be used to access the protocols and all using this XML-based messaging protocols and all, everything. Last but not least, there is another API called EDIs, which is called Electronic Data Interchanges, widely used in healthcare sector. Because whenever we are working on healthcare environment, to access the data or to understand about the data of the healthcare information and all, everything will be in encrypted format. So this is what we call it as EDIs. This is what generally electronic data interchanges are all about. This is also one kind of API which normally people uses in healthcare environment. So these are the examples as well as types of API. One is REST API, second is webhooks, SOAP, third one is SOAP, fourth one is EDI. Of course, there are a couple of more, but the major important and major widely used across industries were these four. Now, here is a question. In what way, being a business analyst, we must be knowing about these APIs? What is that you want to learn if you want to become a business analyst? Especially depends on the kind of role, right? Point to be noted. For every business analyst, a knowledge over API is not required for all the BAs. Subject to terms and conditions, depends on the kind of role, depends on the kind of expertise, the kind of project, the kind of role, what is that we play. Whatever the knowledge over the API and all everything becomes mandatory for some roles, not for every role. But knowing and as well as learning API is not wrong, right? So if you want, due to the personal interest of any individual, anybody can learn API. That is a different concept. Now, if you are a business analyst, what is that you do? When you try to understand APIs too, the first point is that you need to configure, develop, and troubleshoot these APIs. This is the first thing which you have to do. If you are a business analyst, you don't write programming because that will be taken care of by the developers. Developers will write these APIs and all everything using a programming language. But being a business analyst, you must be involving in understanding about configuration, development, as well as troubleshoot of the respective thing. Next, you should be able in a position to detect and as well as resolve the integration related issues, if any, which is optional, because as this is a continuous process, when you are working as a business analyst in reference to have a knowledge of our API. So if there is any requirement you have got, wherein if you have identified any, diagnosed any kind of issues and all everything, that has to be resolved when there is an integration taken place. At the same time, when you're talking about the third one, wherein you need to define and mapping and implementing the concepts and processes, this is also essentially required. So defining it, mapping it, implementation of the concepts, followed by the processes is also required for a business analyst when they are working on this API part. Last but not least, designing integration, extraction, and consumption is what generally we have to do when we are working on APIs and all that. So these are the four major responsibilities as well as the activities which will be performed by a business analyst Apart from their roles and responsibilities I'm talking about, if they are focused more, if any job profile is looking for more about API level, API knowledge over the API and all, major responsibilities being a business analyst we need to do are these four. One is configuration and all that stuff, troubleshooting and all. Second, detecting and resolving integration related issues. Third, defining and mapping implementation of the concepts and processes. Last but not least, design integration, extraction, as well as consumption and all that. So this is all about application programming interface, followed by the knowledge over a business analyst, which is essentially required nowadays in application development. So this is all about API part. If you have any questions regarding this, if you have any needs, please reach out to the contact details, which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.